Henry Cavill's commitment to authenticity was so intense that he shot all his shirtless scenes without CGI touch-ups or enhancements. This level of dedication, along with bold creative choices and unexpected casting decisions, made the journey to Man of Steel anything but typical. From ambitious initial plans to the final movie, here's how the iconic film came to life and what shaped the version we know today. In June 2008, Warner Bros. Started looking for new ideas on how to reboot the Superman film series. They asked comic book writers, screenwriters, and directors to pitch their ideas. Among the people pitching were Grant Morrison, Mark Waid, Geoff Johns, and Brad Meltzer. Grant Morrison, a renowned comic book writer known for his work on All-Star Superman, had ideas for Superman that mirrored his approach in that series, focusing on a hopeful and larger-than-life version of the character, while Mark Waid, another famous comic book writer for Superman Birthright, had a vision that reimagined Superman's origins with a modern twist. And Mark Miller, best known for works like Kick-Ass and Kingsman, The Secret Service, partnered with director Matthew Vaughn and had an ambitious plan to create a trilogy of Superman movies that would tell the full story of his life over 8 hours. The plan was to release each film a year apart, similar to the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Miller even compared it to the Godfather series, saying the story would cover Superman's whole life. The first movie would show the early days of Krypton, with young Kal-El watching his father try to save the planet. The last film would end with Superman losing his powers as the sun went supernova. Vaughn even suggested Charlie Cox, who was in Stardust, as a more relatable Golden Age-inspired Superman. Vaughn said his trilogy would have had a tone similar to Richard Donner's 1978 Superman film, which would have included villains like Zod, Brainiac, and Lex Luthor. But that's not how things turned out to be. Instead of making a sequel to Superman Returns, which Bryan Singer had planned and called Man of Steel, they decided to reboot the entire series. Jeff Robinoff, a studio executive, said they wanted the film to come out by 2010 or 2011. He explained that Superman Returns didn't work the way they hoped and didn't set Superman up the way they wanted. If it had worked, there would have been a movie ready for Christmas 2008 or 2009. Now, their new plan was to reintroduce Superman without connecting it to Batman. And speaking of changes, did you know the casting for Superman and Lois Lane almost turned out very differently? Before Zack Snyder took over the direction of the Superman reboot, Brett Ratner was originally set to direct. His top pick for Clark Kent was Matt Bomer, but once Snyder stepped in, he chose Henry Cavill for the role. Before landing the role of Clark Kent in Man of Steel, Henry Cavill missed out on the same role during the audition process for Superman Returns. Technically, he auditioned for a different Superman project, which was eventually retooled into Superman Returns. Either way, he didn't land the part, and as a huge fan of the character, he was pretty devastated. So he was ecstatic when he did get the role on his second try, and reportedly called all his friends and family when he found out. As for Lois Lane's, if Amy Adams hadn't accepted the role or could make it to the shoot, Zoe Saldana was next in line. Though she didn't end up playing Lois, Saldana later took on another major comic book role as Gamora in the MCU. So, what happened to Superman's famous red trunks? The story behind this costume change might surprise you. One of the biggest changes fans noticed in Man of Steel was Superman's costume. In the traditional design, Superman has those iconic red trunks over his blue suit. But in Man of Steel, those trunks were missing, leaving the suit entirely blue. Zack Snyder, the director, actually wanted to keep the red trunks on Superman's suit. He knew they were a classic part of the character's look. But when the visual team started working on designs, they faced an unexpected problem. They drew up around 1,500 different designs that included the red trunks, but none of them looked right. No matter how they tweaked it, the trunks just didn't fit the modern, serious tone that Snyder was aiming for in the movie. So he made the tough call to cut them from the design. James Akinson and Michael Wilkinson created the final look. It kept the main color scheme and the famous S logo, but it looked darker and more serious. The missing red trunks were a big part of this new, updated look. Snyder said he wanted the suit to have a modern aesthetic that fit the film's vibe. Even though they tried to make the red trunks work, they just couldn't find a design that fit the movie style. Originally, Akinson started designing the suit, but he couldn't finish it because he became unavailable later on. And that's when Wilkinson stepped back in to complete the design and work on the other costumes for the movie. The team faced other challenges as well. General Zod's Kryptonian armor looked bulky and heavy, but in reality, it was made using CGI. And this decision allowed actor Michael Shannon to move freely without being weighed down by a heavy suit. According to Man of Steel editor David Brenner, the initial version of the film had a runtime of 3.5 hours, But by the time it was ready for release, the final cut was trimmed down to 143 minutes. This meant over an hour of footage had to be removed, no doubt leading to some tough editing decisions to streamline the story. And then there's Henry Cavill, who insisted on something you wouldn't expect. Originally, the plan for Superman's look in Man of Steel was to fit the usual image of a clean-shaven, smooth-chested hero. But Henry Cavill had a different idea. He felt that Superman would stay true to his natural self, which meant keeping his chest hair. Cavill believed this would challenge the stereotype that muscular heroes needed to be hairless to look strong. To make his case, he pointed to the Death of Superman comic storyline, where Superman was shown with a hairy chest. And this convinced the producers to go with Cavill's vision, changing the original plan and making Superman's appearance more relatable and authentic in the final version. One of the most controversial moments in Man of Steel is when Superman kills General Zod by breaking his neck. This scene sparked debates among fans and critics, as it was seen as a major departure from Superman's usual code against killing. According to comic book writer Grant Morrison, the killing could have been avoided. Superman could have just covered Zod's eyes to stop the threat. Initially, producer Christopher Nolan, who also contributed to the story, opposed the idea of Superman killing Zod. He felt that it went against the core of the character, but his co-writer David S. Goyer managed to change his mind by arguing that the scene would show Superman as an inexperienced hero who hadn't yet fully refined his sense of morality. This perspective convinced Nolan, leading to the final version that kept the scene and added a layer of complexity to Superman's character. At first, Zack Snyder and Hans Zimmer planned to go with a traditional orchestral score for Man of Steel, but as they worked on it, they felt something was missing. They wanted more energy and something different to make it stand out. So they changed their plan. Instead of just using the orchestra, they brought in some of the best drummers around. Pharrell Williams, John Robinson, Trevor Lawrence Jr., Sheila E., Danny Carey, and Matt Chamberlain all played on the track, each adding their own style. And this gave the music a unique and powerful sound that wasn't a part of the original idea, but ended up making the score special and unforgettable. Now finally, let's talk about Cavill's toughest moment on set. And it's not what you think. The original plan for Superman's appearance in Man of Steel could have included some digital touch-ups or enhancements, as is common in many films. But Henry Cavill had different ideas. He insisted on staying away from performance-enhancing drugs and refused to let the VFX team enhance his body in post-production. Cavill felt that this would be dishonest and wanted to bring authenticity to his portrayal. This shift from the standard approach made the shirtless scenes the toughest parts of the shoot. Cavill had to train intensely to look as if he had been digitally enhanced without actually using any post-production help. This commitment to making a more realistic look added significant challenges and set his portrayal apart from what might have been expected in the initial approach. And that's all, folks. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed learning about the behind-the-scenes stories of Man of Steel, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more insights into your favorite movies. We'll see you in the next one.